Hey y'all, so I'm just gonna jump right in. Where'd I leave off? This is episode 15, by the way. So just to recap, this is at the point where I'm like, I'm done, I'm out. Like, peace out. I'm out. Okay. And this is also, I had the vision. I was driving, headed to the DMV of me giving the youngin money, the youngin giving the baby mom's money, and the baby's mom giving it to the practitioner to do spell work. Now, at the time, I didn't know what none of these spell work with the names were. However, I could see what was being done. I just didn't know what the names were of them. And so I would go on YouTube. YouTube University is what I like to call it. I would go on YouTube and then I would come across a video on accident, on purpose, that happened to connect the spell with the name. So that's how I became accustomed to what the name of this, as far as the name of the actual spell that they were doing, such as binding spells, binding rituals, sex magic, separation magic, death magic. Okay, these were a few things that were being done to me and him in part of 2020 and definitely in 2021. Now, as I'm driving and I'm headed, one other thing. At the time, so I know that he first came out and told me he had one kid, and then he slips out he has two kids, okay? And he tells me he has one baby mom's. This was in 2020, okay? And then he tells me he has a girlfriend. Now, the reason why I'm recapping this is because it's going to make sense further down the line, which I'll probably have to recap again at some point to re-jog the memory. So at this point, I'm driving, I'm heading over to the DMV. I want to clean out my apartment or my spot before I move in anything from Philadelphia, okay? From Philly, anything from Philly, okay? I went to clean out. Now, the first time, I remember when I had just gotten my keys and I had opened it, and I think I was in the kitchen putting stuff away, like products away. And then I heard somebody walk into my apartment. Like, this person was like past the foyer, looking all up in my shit. I had no shit, it was empty, but still looking up in here. It was a neighbor to the right. And that's when I knew, I'm like, okay, I'm about to live across some nosy ass motherfuckers up in this bitch. Okay. So I kicked her out. And frankly, we don't speak. We haven't spoken since that moment. Okay. I speak to her daughter. Her daughter seems to be a really a sweetheart. I speak to her daughter, or her daughter speaks to me. She seems like a very sweet girl. Now, what I will say is the whole of 2021, your girl was experiencing PTSD. To go from a seemingly normal life, and I was always out and about because I had to be for work. And then, COVID comes and I'm living in hermit mode. And so to go from that transition and into my new spot where I didn't really know that many people, I probably knew a handful of people, but I wasn't that close. I think I was only close to one person that I know. I was only close to one person who was still living here because as the pandemic hit, a lot of people left. Okay. Now, during this time, I'm basically staying home unless I need to go out for groceries, for gas, or to get stuff to fix my place up, right? And I would catch myself looking through the blinds to seeing who may be parked outside, who may be driving back and forth. I would look outside. If you used to living in the hood, it don't matter what hood place you live in. It don't matter what place you live in. If you see a car drive by slow, it don't matter what place you live in. You staring that shit down. You hear me? But anyways, that's funny, but it's true. So I'm looking out, neighborhood or whatever, and nothing stands out. Okay, so I'm thinking, oh, I can breathe a sigh of relief somewhat. Now, mind you, I tell nobody that I'm moving. I tell nobody that I've moved. The only people that know that I've moved are the people that are helping me move. And I actually don't divulge that I've moved, I think, until a year and a half into the move. Like nobody, except for the people that helped me move. It's like that low key. Now, I think one other thing that I will say, during the 2021, I will say that there was a point where my grandma comes to me in my dream, and it's very similar to my Christmas Carol. So you remember when Scrooge gets visited by the three ghosts, past, present, and future. It was something like that, where my grandma had visited me in the dream, and she told me that I would start to be visited by spirits, and to not be alarmed, and to communicate, basically have the ability to communicate with spirits, non-physical awareness. Okay. And y'all, I mean, even though she kind of prepared me, I don't think anybody can ever really be prepared for that. I mean, especially if you got spirits coming up in here, just walking up and through here. Because mind you, this is my first crash course. So I had not set up boundaries yet. So I had spirits walking up in here. I had children walking up in here, children spirits, adult spirits. I had animal spirits. Angels would walk up through here. My ancestors will walk up through here. And of course, my guides, but it was just like a hodgepodge. And anybody who's accustomed to working or communicating with non-physical awareness, they don't care what time it is. They coming up all through the night. All through the night, And so I really had to adjust and learn boundaries real quick, especially as it relates to the spirit world. Okay. Because they don't understand. There's no concept of time, with them. If there's a message that needs to be relayed, they coming at you right then and there. They will wake you up from your sleep, okay, to give you a message. Okay. But anyways, so that's that. And it's funny because the whole time I was on some no new friends, like I'm good, no new friends, no new dick, no old dick. I'm like, I was so good. And then what ended up happening, I started getting restless. So like around in June, I hopped on OkCupid again, just sparking conversation, Again, I didn't know anybody here. A lot of the people that I did know moved at some point during the pandemic, and I only knew one person that I was relatively close to. And she had a child and I didn't. So with that, you do life differently. Someone who's being single versus who has children. But so I think it was like around June that I started communicating on OkCupid, the app, getting, conversation, nothing serious. And then I met somebody who was in their 50s. And I said, okay, maybe this is safe. Because it's far from the youngin'. And it's more along the lines of what I'm used to. I usually like older men, okay? The younger situation was very different for me. So he seemed really cool, and I made sure that I was going to take it slow. Like we legit talked like for a few months before we met up. And I believe our first date was, what was it? We went to the Cheesecake Factory. It was cool. He was funny, great conversation. And I remember telling him, hey, I don't want to alarm you, but I said, I speak to dead people. And I said that mainly for shock value, and he did look a little shocked, but I'm like, no, really, I'm a medium. And he was just like, oh, okay, And I think I also had told him a little bit that, oh yeah, and I'm used to people. I'm not used to, but I moved from Philadelphia because I was being followed. And even though that was partially true, that wasn't the whole truth. Me leaving Philadelphia, I just wanted fresh new scenery. I wanted to get far away from my ex. And I wanted to get far away from this toxic situation that I found myself in with the youngin, And it was just an opportunity. So that's why I moved, If I had to sum it up in 3 reasons, that's why I moved. So, I shared that with him. He seemed like a little bit alarmed, but not too much, One thing that I can remember is it was always jokes and laughs with us. We were both the same signs, Aries. But it was jokes. He was funny, and it was always a good time with him. We were dating. We weren't exclusive at this point or stage. He did ask me to be his girlfriend. I believe it was in the fall. Was it in the fall? Yeah. Like around November, December-ish. I think it was like maybe in November. And then December, like literally like maybe a week or 2 weeks after asking me to be his girl, he went cold. I mean, no texts, no phone calls, no dates. It was just like nothing. Ghost. And I remember like maybe a month prior to that, we had our first heated disagreement. And it's always interesting when you have that because this reveals a certain side of the person, that you may not have been accustomed to up until that point. And I just remember his disposition, and I just remember like, I don't like that, not the fact that we were arguing, but just how he got when we were arguing. And I mean, I tend to be very passionate too, but it was just, I don't know, it didn't sit well with me. This was the first time. And then I just kind of like took it like, oh, okay, well, maybe it may be a coincidence. Not coincidence, but, let me see how he responds another time. And I remember seeing us getting into an argument or disagreement like a second time. And he responded pretty much the same way. And I remember thinking to myself like, yeah, no. Because I'm thinking to myself like, I'm thinking to myself like at 53, even in arguments or disagreements, if you're not able to control, like, it's not like he would get physical, but if you're not able to have a disagreement without raising your voice, that's the issue or problem for me. Okay. Because I used to do that. And I know that for me, when somebody else does it, I get triggered by it. And then I match energy. And that's not going to be good for either one of us. So I just remember thinking to myself, like, yeah, no. But so am I mad that he went ghost? I'm like, no, I'm disappointed because I figured that he could have at least communicated that, especially at 53 at the time. But there's going to be a reason why I'm bringing this up. I'm going to connect the dots. So one thing that I thought was very interesting is he had asked me Y'all, I'm going to just say it. He had asked me, it was only once, but he had asked me if I can do anal. Now, initially, I didn't think anything of it, but I remember him asking me that. Now, put that in your mental Rolodex, because I'm about to come back with this. Around the time when I was speaking to him on OkCupid, I came across another guy. This guy was younger. This guy was in his late 20s, very similar to the youngin'. Okay. And we would talk. And he seemed to be a spiritual dude. I could tell from the conversations. He was a spiritual dude, or he could have just simply been pandering to me. But I'm not really pandering to me, but as far as like my spirituality practices, because at this point they were growing, but I never really showcased them. I was like kind of in the closet with it, mainly because I come from a very religious family and background. So there's not that many people that I would divulge that type of information to. Okay. I don't even think I told my best friends at the time. But anyways, so it was this guy. And I remember us talking a little bit about spiritual stuff, but I kind of felt like he may have been putting it a little bit on thick. One thing I respected about him was just like, he's like, hey, listen, I just came from a relationship. We were dating for X amount of time. She cheated on me. He was just like, at this point, all I can do is give you good dick and gas money if you need it. And you know what? I respected his honesty. I did. I fuck with that. I mean, as vulgar as it was and upfront as it was, I fuck with that. And I found out he was an Aries too. So I also think that's another thing I probably fuck with. It was kind of like I wasn't put off by that language is what I'm saying. Okay. I wasn't. So what ended up happening was I was just like, all right. I said, all right. I'm going to get into it the next episode. I'm going to tell you what happened.